This is episode 24 of Unpopular Opinions with Ryan Tofil. Give it a whiff. Everyone's favorite numbers are here. It's time for 80 through 71. That means 69 is next week. Nice. But for now, 80 and 79 and 78. You get the idea, okay? According to Ryan, the Super Nintendo is the greatest gaming console ever. Although he thinks Unpopular Opinions is the greatest podcast ever. So make it out what you will. Brian's gone, Dan's dead. He's just a boy in his goddamn list. Only 7 more episodes to go after this. You can make it!
Welcome! Episode number 999 of So You Think You Can Prance. The show that's kind of like You Think You Can Dance, but the only contestants are deer. I'm Ryan Tofil, and this is Unpopular Opinions. Guys, we've got solo list to solve the V2.3. We're going to jump right in. I'm not wasting any time. Number 80 on the countdown of the best Super Nintendo games ever. Right? So, like, episode 1, I thought I was going to do all 100 or maybe 50, but that was way off the mark. Episode 2... Oh, I'm sorry. In episode 1, I only got 10 done, so I did 10 more in episode 2. Now we're on episode 3. All right? So we're going number 80, number 79. We're going to see how many we get through. I'm thinking it's going to be about 10. But if it's not, don't come from my head because I don't know, right? Like right now we're a minute 15 into the podcast, and when we're an hour into the podcast, then you'll know, and I'll know. You'll actually probably know before me because you'll be able to read the show notes that I haven't written yet. But guys, before we get into this list that I know you're all waiting for, I just want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, eToro. eToro is an online trading platform that deals with all sorts of different cryptocurrencies. And my favorite feature on there, guys, is the virtual portfolio. Okay, so you don't even have to make a real deposit with your real dollars to see if you might be able to handle crypto trading. Because what you can do is you can just go on there and you can create a profile, and they give you 100,000 fake dollars, virtual dollars, and what you do then is you go and you pick your cryptos and you trade them and you buy low and you sell high, just like I was telling Dan Brown to do. And then you see how you do with that virtual money, and after you're confident trading with that virtual money, and you're turning a profit there, that's when you switch over to the real dollars and you start putting a little cushion on your bank account. You know what I'm saying? So that's eToro. Go to youmeanbtc.com/trade. Check out eToro. Number 80, Super Turrican. As a member of the USS Freedom Forces, you don a Turrican assault suit and take on the evil forces of the machine. With 13 giant levels to explore and a satisfying array of weapons to choose from, Super Turrican rules. This game's often described as Super Metroid Light, but so what? Any game that can manage to be even half as cool as Super Metroid is worth playing. Also, Super Turrican came out first. Yeah, that's a good point. Super Turrican came out in 1993. Super Metroid is one of those games that gets a lot of love on the Super Nintendo. I personally never really got into it. I never got into Castlevania that much either. But that's okay. They're one of those things. Whether it's Star Wars or Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or RPGs or any Pokemon game besides Red and Blue and Yellow, and I've actually been playing through Crystal a little, but it's like one of those things. You know what I mean? Where I don't love it, but I can see the appeal for other people. Do you know what I'm saying? And the Metroid series and the Castlevania series and games in that vein, Metroidvania, they're not particularly for me. I know when I have Bryan Chai on this show, he definitely loves those games. They're not particularly for me. But that doesn't mean that Super Turrican isn't a good game. I mean, it made number 80 on this list, and I really, really respect the ranking of this list thus far. The only one that I really disagreed with was Disney's Aladdin at number 85. I think that should be in the top 20, 25, easily the top 50. And then NHL 94. But the guys who put this list together were not that big of sports fans, okay? So they didn't put NHL 94 that high, but that's honestly in the conversation for the greatest sports video game ever. So I definitely think that deserves to be a little bit higher on this list than number 100. But that's only two things from each episode thus far that I really can find much fault with. So I'm going to trust them here at number 80, Super Turrican. Number 79, The Adventures of Batman and Robin. Now, this is a very, very cartoony looking game, but it's made by Konami, okay? And Konami put out a lot of good games on the Super Nintendo. Look at Sunset Riders. Okay, now that was, I believe, number 91 on this list. But that was a really good game. Actually, Sunset Riders, I would have to put a bit higher than 91. I don't think that's quite as egregious as the other two. I'd probably put Sunset Riders maybe just inside the top 50. But for me, NHL 94 and Disney's Aladdin would both probably be in the top 25. So this is based on Batman the Animated Series, and it's a side scroller that pits Batman and Robin against classic enemies from the show, including Clayface, Poison Ivy, the Riddler, the Penguin, Man-Bat, and of course, the Joker. The Joker movie is making a big stir. Right now, it's like the fourth highest grossing R-rated movie of all time, and I really didn't mind it. I really, really like the movie. I think if you're looking for a dark psychological thriller, you could do much worse than the Joker. It might be my second favorite movie in that genre behind Requiem for a Dream, but Requiem for a Dream is honestly one of my favorite movies. It's very similar to Trainspotting. If you've never seen Requiem for a Dream, in Trainspotting, it can get a little dark. I mean, there's a death or two in there, but Requiem for a Dream really, really dives deep into the horrors of drug use. And the Joker is kind of in that same vein, but it's more about the psychological damages of bullying. And I don't want to give too much away, but if you haven't seen Joker yet, I recommend you check that one out. I personally, again, this is not one that I'm super familiar with. I may have tried The Adventures of Batman and Robin back when I was a kid, or maybe in the early days as I was just figuring out emulation. I tried out a whole bunch of different games. I don't know a ton about this one. All I know is that it is better than Batman Forever. Batman Forever, about the most disappointing thing that I've ever played. Number 78, Super Scope 6. In this cartridge that came bundled with the Super Scope hardware, you choose one of 6 different games to play with your SNES light gun. Blasters A, Blasters B, Mole Patrol, and 3 different Laser Blazer variants: Intercept, Engage, and Confront. Each of the games is filled with mindless, addictive fun, but beware, the Super Scope requires 6 fresh AA batteries for every 4 hours of gameplay. It wasn't just the Super Scope back in the day that was having trouble plowing through batteries. Okay, that was probably the main problem with the Game Gear, because the rate that the Sega Game Gear ate up batteries was just absolutely incredible, especially when you compare it to the Game Boy, which, while still requiring 4 AA batteries, it was a rather modest power consumption when you compare it to the full color display of the Game Gear. And And that's something you can run into with any of these old games and their peripherals, their accessories. Some of them, you don't need any of this battery nonsense. You know, like you've got the mouse. You've got the mouse in Mario Paint. No batteries for that mouse. But the Super Scope 6, this thing required 6 batteries. And this thing wasn't just like the NES Zapper light gun. This was a shoulder-mounted mother effer. Okay? This was an intense piece of hardware. But if you could get those 6 AA batteries going, you know, you only get 4 hours out of it. But holy cow, that's expensive. 6 AA batteries. The NES Zapper didn't need any. You just plugged it into the controller port. This looks like one of those games that'd be really, really fun. It's just a matter of if you could really get your hands on the accessories at this point in time. Number 77, Uniracers, released in 1994. Now, Uniracers is very, very interesting. It's actually one of the more rare games in terms of quantity on the Super Nintendo because there was a lawsuit. If you've ever seen the Pixar short with the little red unicycle, Pixar sued, I don't know if it was Nintendo or the developer DMA Design, sued them for ripping off their design for a unicycle from a Pixar short. And this game had to halt production. And I don't think that they ever resolved that lawsuit and then printed more. So whatever came out originally is what's out there. Now, the reason why Uniracers isn't a super expensive game is because, honestly, it wasn't really all that popular. Now, it was released as kind of an answer to Sonic the Hedgehog. You know Sonic the Hedgehog, Sega Genesis, blast processing, gotta go fast, yada, yada, yada. Sonic could zoom, dude. And I'll admit that you look back on some of those commercials from back in the day, and Sonic the Hedgehog looks so much more action-packed than Mario. Now, it's a completely different type of platforming. They handle differently. They look differently. The objectives are a little different. In Mario, Super Mario World, it was a little bit more about exploring and taking your time and puzzle solving and separate exits. And Sonic the Hedgehog was like an adrenaline shot of Mario. It was Mario if he was made by an edgy teenager. Uniracers was the Super Nintendo's answer to Sonic the Hedgehog, plagued by constant accusations from Sega that the SNES hardware couldn't run something as fast as Sonic. Nintendo contracted DMA Design to create this hyper-fast racing game for them. This game is very fast, but in order to accomplish the speed, DMA had to really strip down the graphics. So in essence, Sega was right. Yeah, I mean, this game does run extremely fast, but there's also not a ton going on the screen at one time. It's a unicycle, and it's a single bar beneath that unicycle for the track. And you could do tricks and stuff which helped you gain speed in a little bit of a risk-reward system. And you could do two-player action. Simultaneous two-player action. And I don't remember there being much slowdown, but also obviously the screen, the field of view was smaller, so they didn't have quite as many things going on. But even then, there wasn't a ton on screen in this game. It was a very simple looking game, and it was all about the gameplay. And it was all about the adrenaline, because in this game, you kind of had, it was like a Top Gear sort of thing, where you had to kind of learn the tracks to get really, really good at the game and anticipate turns as they were coming up. So you could do your tricks and you could do your jumps at the appropriate time to get the speed burst coming out. Why Nintendo would want to compete with a game where all you do is hold right on a keypad and occasionally jump, and why they thought a unicycle racing game would appeal to anyone are questions we may never have solid answers to, but it doesn't matter. Uniracers is a great game. It's a sort of concept that shouldn't work, but somehow it does. This is one of those games that when you see it sitting on a store shelf, you roll your eyes, snicker, and walk away. Then one of your friends forces you to play it, and you're absolutely stunned at how much fun it is. Like I said, not about the graphics, not about the box art. All that was the word Uniracers. It was about the gameplay. Number 76, X-Men Mutant Apocalypse. Take control of Wilbur. Wilbur was that pig. And that freaking Charlotte, dude. Charlotte, man, from Charlotte's Web. You never seen Charlotte's Web. Now there's a movie. Charlotte's Web, this pig, he's upset because he doesn't know what's going on. And then this spider starts writing a bunch of ridiculous things in her web saying number one pig, you know? Charlotte's Web, dude. That's classic. Wilburine. So I'm not sure if you actually take control of Wilburine, who is the pig from Charlotte's Web, with huge knives on his hand, or if it's Wolverine, he's the X-Man. Take control of Wolverine, Cyclops, Beast, Gambit, and Psylocke, and free mutants who are being held by the corrupt Ganashian government. After a while, your attention will turn to bigger and better things. Along the way, you'll fight magistrates, Sentinels, Apocalypse, the Brood, Omega Red, Juggernaut, and Magneto. As this game has 2 sets of character-specific levels, so you have to learn how to use 5 X-Men's unique abilities and fighting game-style movesets. Never been huge into superheroes. And that's okay. That just means I'm not going to comment too much on number 76, X-Men Mutant Apocalypse. It looks good. It's a Capcom game, and it looks good. In the Super Nintendo era, Capcom did a whole lot of things right. They probably have the best licensed games on the system. The Mickey Mouse games. They did Mega Man. They did Disney's Aladdin. They probably did Tiny Toon Adventures, Buster Bust Loose. I can't remember, but that was on last episode. Any Capcom game, I think did pretty well on the Super Nintendo. Now, I know I said that Mega Man Soccer wasn't my favorite game of all time, but still, I agree with its inclusion as one of the top 100 Super Nintendo games ever. So you're definitely, no game on this list is a bad game. Super Adventure Island. One day, Master Higgins and his girlfriend Tina were sitting in a very tall tree enjoying the view. They were having a great time, but then the evil sorcerer Dark Cloak showed up and turned Tina into stone for no apparent reason. Can Fatty save his girlfriend? Of course, of course he can, unless you suck at platformers. Yeah, so all these games came in hot with Super in their title when they're on the Super Nintendo, so that you knew you weren't playing the NES version anymore. They had to let you know, hey, we're not messing around anymore, bud. This is not your daddy's SNES. Or your daddy's NES. I don't know what I'm saying. This is not your daddy's anything, not even his root beer. Okay? This is the Super Nintendo. Okay? This is not the Adventure Island. You're playing in 8-bit graphics, man. This is 16, dude. Hudson Soft, 1992. It was pretty commonplace for SNES games to have Super in their title, so it reminded you that you weren't playing NES games, you weren't playing a Sega Genesis game. This was a Super Nintendo game, okay? And you got the seal of quality that came with it. In many cases, it was completely meaningless in terms of the game's quality. But I think Super Adventure Island is one of those rare cases where It actually is much better than the 8-bit version, and the majority of that difference can be attributed to Super Adventure Island being out on the SNES, because it's one of those games that focuses on charm in the graphics department. And as I was saying when I started this list, or maybe it was on Solo List Assault V1.1, that this era of games is my favorite style graphically. I think it's the same style as 8-bit, it's just better pixel art. You know, there aren't too many games on the NES that just looked better than the equivalent game on SNES. Now, I definitely think you could say that about the SNES in comparison to games on the N64. Because by the time we got to the N64 or PS1 or even, you know, Sega Dreamcast and stuff like that, although things started to get much, much better in the polygon sphere there. When we're talking graphics from 16-bit to 64-bit, we may have made the jump to 3D like one system too early. You know what I'm saying? Where this pixel art in 16-bit looked really awesome. But then when you upgraded these games to 64-bit, we didn't quite know how to do 3D I still don't know how to do 3D graphics at all. But the people making the games didn't know how to do it that well back in the day. Whereas, you know, you're only dealing with a two-dimensional view in the 16-bit for the most part. The same as you dealt with in the NES. So you're trying to do the same thing, just with more power. Now, the N64 was trying to do something completely different, which is why I don't think that N64 games have quite the charm that 16-bit games do. You know what I mean? And Super Adventure Island is a title that really benefits from being a 16-bit console, from being on a 16-bit console. These games are better than the Adventure Island series on the NES. Just like I think that the Super Mario World games, you know, if you want to throw Yoshi's Island to that, I think that they were oodles better than anything that you got on the NES. Now, I know a lot of people will disagree with me and say that Super Mario Bros. 3 is better than Super Mario World. It might even be the best game of all time. But I don't agree with that at all. I don't think you can find one thing for me that these days Super Mario Bros. 3 does better than Super Mario World. I understand that maybe if you're looking at it in terms of the era in which it came out, you know, Super Mario Bros. 3 didn't beat Super Mario World to the market by much, because Super Mario World was a launch title for the Super Nintendo, which is still incredible. That I don't know how Nintendo does that. Super Mario Sunshine, Super Mario World, Super Mario Brothers, although people generally don't like that as much as 3. I think you have an argument there for the best game of the system, even if I probably wouldn't 100% definitively say Super Mario Brothers was the best game on the NES. I think it has an argument, and to even have a 1% chance at that, you're doing pretty good for a launch title. Number 74, King of the Monsters, released in 1992 by Takara. Select one of 4 giant monsters, Gion, Astro Guy, Rocky, or Beatlemania, and battle against a friend or a computer for control of one of 7 major cities. King of the Monsters isn't necessarily a great game, but it's a game that a lot of people remember, largely due to the heavy pimpage it received on Nickelodeon's Nick Arcade. It's essentially a wrestling game with monsters, destructible backgrounds, and occasional military interference. It's fairly fun, but the SNES and Genesis home versions aren't nearly as good as the original Neo Geo game. King of the Monsters is perhaps most notable for the game it eventually inspired, Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee. Yeah, Douche McAllister says, watching all of those kids play this game on Nick Arcade made me want to try it out. Well, it's not bad for what it is. It's horrible for what it isn't. This game could have been awesome. Yeah, I mean, you got a bunch of monsters walking around, destroying cities and battling each other in the military. That sounds like it has a lot of potential, but it may have been hard to do on the Super Nintendo back in the early 90s. Number 73, Super Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back, released in 1993 by Sculptured Software under license from LucasArts, published by JVC Musical Industries. Woo! Mouthful there, mouthful. You can in this one you can play as Luke, Han, and Chewie and battle your way through Hoth, Dagobah, and the Cloud City. I am having a whole bunch of trouble talking today. Maybe it's because I don't have my root beer or the ginge. Give me the ginge, give me the ginge. I don't got my ginge. I'm drinking water today because I figured you guys are tired of me burping into the microphone, but I don't know what it is. It's like I'm constantly talking tongue twisters. It's a tongue twister tornado coming at me. You know what I'm saying? It's a total tongue twister tornado. And I'm worried that it might double up and it'll be two total tongue twister tornadoes. Two total tongue twister tornadoes, yeah. So in this one, you get to fight Boba Fett and Darth Vader, okay? Now, the Chewbacca levels in this game are kind of boring, but you remember in the last one, I said, hey, bud, you know, where's my dude Boba? At least that's what Sid Lexia was saying. And in this version, you get to fight against Boba Fett. Green-Eyed Zeke says, it's the best Star Wars movie and it's the best of the Super NES platformers. The Empire Strikes Back is bigger, harder, and better looking than its predecessor and a more satisfying overall experience than its sequel. And the game knows how to inspire you to keep playing. When you run out of lives, you're brought to a continue screen featuring a picture of Yoda on Dagobah. Yeah, man, I can't say Yoda. Choose to keep going, and he sagely advises, do or do not. There is no try. Opt to stop playing, and he gets pissed at you. This is why you fail. Like, seriously, not only do I have to wallow in the miserable knowledge that I suck at the game, but Yoda himself is calling me a failure? That's brutal. These Super Star Wars games are pretty good. You better be good at platformers, and you better be good at 16-bit platformers, and you better be good at 16-bit side-scrolling platformers. You're not going to get very far in these. These games are hard. These games are hard. Number 72, NBA Jam, released in 1994 by Iguana Entertainment under license from Midway, published by Acclaim. Now this probably isn't as good as NBA Jam Tournament Edition, but it did come out first. And this is one of those things where even though Tournament Edition is just, you know, a head or two above its competition, this is the original. And this is one of those games where, like, you felt like you were playing in the arcade. And that didn't necessarily happen all of the time in early arcade ports. You'd be playing in the arcade and then you'd get it home and you'd be like, this was supposed to be the same game? You know, an NBA Jam was one of the first ones where you're like, oh, okay, dude. Like, I can get behind that, dude. Like, we are bringing the arcade home. With Mortal Kombat, debate raged as to whether the Genesis or the Super Nintendo got the better arcade port. But we all know that the original Mortal Kombat was better on the Genesis. I think Mortal Kombat 2 was better on the Super Nintendo, but the Genesis option to have the blood just like the arcade gives that to the Genesis. This now, NBA Jam was Midway's other hit arcade game around this time. Okay, and when they brought it home, they maybe did a little bit better job on the Super Nintendo than they had done with Mortal Kombat. Okay. This one, it wasn't a question on whether it was better on Genesis or Super Nintendo, according to Green-Eyed Zeke. He says that the Nintendo version was much better. He says the graphics are better, the digitized voices were intact, and the smash of the backboard when you exploded through it was like sperm through the condom your insane girlfriend put holes in to force an accident and make you stay with her. Green-Eyed Zeke, you have a lot bigger problems than needing to figure out something to say about this video game, dude. If that's what's going on in your life, put down the games from 1994 and get yourself a new girlfriend, okay? That's like borderline a crime. You know what I'm saying? Douche McAllister, who might be my favorite reviewer on this website, says, he's heating up. He's on fire. Boom shakalaka. Who hasn't used these phrases outside of the game? I remember my cousin busted his head off the side of the pool and I screamed, boom shakalaka, as loud as I could. My aunt laughed until she realized he was hurt pretty badly. 71, Breath of Fire. Released in 1994 by Capcom, publisher Square. Square did a lot of good things on the Super Nintendo. Capcom did a lot of good things on the Super Nintendo. That's why it's no surprise to see Breath of Fire on this list. Okay? Now, Capcom hadn't even done a ton of RPGs before this. This was just proof that they were on a roll at this time, okay? Capcom, on an early Nintendo game, you know, within the first 10 years, generally meant it was pretty good. All of the Mega Man... There are 10 Mega Man side-scrolling games across 2 consoles. They made 10 of them, and all of them were awesome. Mega Man 7, probably the worst of them, and that's still a pretty darn good game. Now think about that. Think about that. Do you think that can you even name the last 10 Call of Duties? No. But when you had Mega Man 2, Mega Man 3, Mega Man 4, Mega Man 5, Mega Man 6, Mega Man 7, Mega Man X, Mega Man X2, Mega Man X3. Plus all of the other things Capcom was doing around this time, it's no wonder that they have so many games on this list. They were a good developer back then. Number 71, Breath of Fire. Zog, the evil leader of the Dark Dragon Clan, has started attacking the other dragon clans and razing their towns so that they won't be able to stop him from freeing the evil goddess Tyr from her prison and using her power to conquer the world. As Ryu, I don't think it's the same one from Street Fighter. That must be a more popular name in Asia. A generic blue-haired descendant of the Light Dragon Clan is up to you to assemble a band. I'm sorry, not a hand. There I go. I can't talk again. A band of brave warriors. Seek out your clan's lost power and become strong enough to defeat Zog. Oh yeah, and you have to rescue your sister too. You've got to rescue everyone in these early games. You do. You do. Nobody's ever saving you. I'll tell you that for free. But, While people might not be saving you in Super Nintendo games, I'm saving you in real life right now by stopping the list after our customary 10 entries. Okay, you don't need to listen to me ramble anymore. You don't need to listen to old Riptide go on and on and on. We know you want Dan back. We know you want Bryan back, Bradley back, Jake back. We know you want somebody back besides me. So I'm going to cut the solo list to Saul here. But guys, before I do, I just want to thank eToro and all of you out there for listening. Without you listening, guys, this wouldn't be possible. I wouldn't be allowed to sit in a room and ramble about things that are almost 30 years old, okay? The only reason I'm able to put the time and energy into doing this is because you guys listen, and I thank you for doing that. If you want to get at me on Twitter, at Rytoff, let me know if you like the show. Guys, Thank you one last time so much. This has been Unpopular Opinions, Solo List Assault, V2.3, Super Nintendo Countdown, number 80 through 71. Bye.